Hi everyone, my name's Natalie McLean. I'm Director of Sport at Latham Upper School. Neil has asked me to answer a few questions regarding the provision for sport during the pandemic. And he's posed a few questions that I'm going to just run through from our perspective. I'm a relatively new Director of Sport here, so I actually started in September 2020. So that came off the back of obviously moving schools. My previous school was Kingston Grammar School. I was actually furloughed for much of the summer term before that because obviously I was leaving. So they wanted to make sure that the department had some plans for September and almost without me. So that was really weird. That was like a premature end to my tenure at my previous school. But it did enable me to get stuck in actually with looking ahead to my start and what the September start might look like. You know, and I was lucky enough to be able to speak to all heads of sport before we started putting plans into place. Obviously taking into consideration the national governing body guidelines. And in fact, in September 2020, we were lucky in the sense that we managed to start with our normal kind of, particularly our junior school programme in games of hockey for girls and rugby for boys, albeit non-contact. And really the kind of thing that really struck us, obviously it was just about getting kids back in playing. And getting into routines, because obviously at that point we had all the cleaning routines, not sharing equipment, having separate bibs for every single year group. So once we kind of got people used to that sort of thing and having exits and entrances where we didn't have any year groups mixing, I think that was kind of the biggest challenge, particularly as we continued to offer a Saturday offering. So obviously we had different year groups arriving at different times, so therefore we needed to make sure that there was no year group mixing inside or outside. So that was probably one of some of the biggest challenges that we had. As I said, we continued with Saturday training, so being able to do that even throughout some of the lockdowns was hugely beneficial, which kept the kids engaged and kept the kids involved. The only caveat to that was I think we had 4 weeks where club sport was obviously at a more advanced stage, and also we weren't necessarily allowed to do anything extra. So I think there was a 4-week period, I think in November 2020, when we weren't able to run anything, but we did run some virtual things such as Strava challenges and all those sorts of virtual stuff. So we ran virtual trainings for those 4 weeks. So we actually still did a Saturday offering, but we just did that. Other things that we did, particularly coping with some of the obvious issues such as year group mixing, was that we had no changing. And so therefore students could come into school in their games kit, and the same on PE days as well. And actually that is one thing that has continued now, and it's been hugely welcomed by students, parents and teachers. It's revolutionised, particularly PE. We only have a 45-minute lesson. It's enabled us to be able to do that and do as much activity as we possibly can. So that's really great. And also lost property has gone down, which is also a bonus. Obviously the big, as I said, split year groups was really difficult. We've got a massive sixth form, so it wasn't deemed that we could keep them together as a bubble, and that became quite frustrating, particularly for the outgoing year 13s. They, and obviously not having any formal competition as well. That was particularly hard on them, and they got, and we obviously, everybody who had the upper sixth or year 13s felt particularly sorry for them because it wasn't a great end to their sporting careers at the school. What we did actually kind of have to do in the end was that we did end up doing almost all the activities for one year group. We almost loaded them on one day, so that it made, for example, areas within our sports centre much easier to manage. So we knew only particularly one year group was coming in and out. And whilst that made things easier, it wasn't necessarily great, because obviously you want to spread the offering throughout the week. And what we felt was, let's say Monday was almost like year 7 day for all their co-curricular clubs. And, we couldn't take them off site. We're a split site school, a huge challenge. So we couldn't actually offer field sport training in person because we couldn't transport them. So we did a lot of things virtually. So we did offer hockey club, let's say at home, but it would be virtually. Let's say we'd allow them to get home and then we would offer it. So that's how we tried to keep that going. With the year 11s, year 12s and year 13s, we actually kept them separate on a particular evening, and we did like a fitness night with them. So we just wanted to keep squads together, and actually that had a really positive effect on their mental health and well-being. And whilst it was a little bit tedious at times, just doing fitness and teamwork, And in some cases, we did manage to do some actual sport stuff, like in the, netball in the sports hall, a little bit of indoor hockey or a little bit of indoor football. We just tried to keep those senior squads going. On that note, there was more of an emphasis on health and fitness, and that has been a huge positive. So there is more awareness, there is more desire, this kind of individual fitness responsibility. And whilst we never want to return to the days of bedroom fitness, I really do think that because we're now running quite an extensive strength and conditioning program, which we've opened up to the whole school, we're getting really good numbers. They're really engaging in health and fitness, and particularly athletic development. So that's in a really, really good place. So I would say that's really one positive that's come out of it. In order of competitive sport, obviously that was the biggest thing that we missed, and that was the biggest thing I think the kids missed. And they keep saying that last year was rubbish because they never got to play a fixture. Well, we actually did manage to start playing fixtures, but not until the 10th of May, which was mainly cricket and tennis, which we managed to get, and athletics, which we managed to do. But instead we did, and I'm sure lots of people did these kind of intra-sport Super Sixes type franchise challenges. So in the longer term, we did that over a series of weeks. So we trained exclusively before half term. And then after half term in October, we started the Super Sixes for hockey and for rugby. And we put them into, let's say, blue Pumas and, red Panthers. And they stayed in those teams throughout the year, and they'd play each other. So it was our form of inter-house sport, which we actually don't have a house system, so that was also a challenge. So by creating these little tournaments, it really, really helped from that perspective. And they really enjoyed them. So we've actually carried those little mini tournaments on, not over a series of weeks, but in the last game session, let's say over half term, we've managed to do that. What we've also really, really pushed for is obviously clubs, as I said before, club and school sport were at different stages last year in the pandemic and under different government guidelines. So at times we'd really encourage club participation. That was the time you can go and, go and get your competitive sport, go and play for your clubs. The problem with that, with something like football, was that for particularly a lot of boys, is that they ended up going and playing for their clubs on a Saturday, which is what we encouraged last year. But of course now, they're wanting to stay with those clubs, but then there's a clash with school sport, and now I'm fighting battles with particular parents or maybe high achieving performers in certain sports that have prioritised club for the last year and now want to do the same, and now are kind of like, well, why are you questioning us? And I'm like, no, we want to put school sport forward. You should be prioritising school sport, and particularly if they were year 7 last year, that's a really hard battle to fight now, because it's almost like we've lost them. But on the flip side of that, there is a real appetite on a Saturday. We're finding, particularly from girls, they're just absolutely loving it. I think from the social side particularly, it's everything that team sport particularly provides students and kids and everybody. So we've really seen an engagement on Saturday sport this year. What else? What else have we noticed, particularly now moving out of it? Collaboration. It's great being able to, you feel like a bit more of a community. I mean, we're lucky that we've got quite a few schools geographically really near us. And obviously when we started playing fixtures last May, we were walking distance from quite a few schools. So we just did that, it'd be like, right, will you come to us for tennis this night? Obviously split year groups, because we had to keep everybody separate. And obviously, grab and go teas and all the rest of it, no hanging around, no sharing stuff. But I think we got over that pretty quickly, but that was what was really great. And I think that we have stronger relationships with particularly those schools around us than we did before. And it feels less of a competition. It feels more like we're in it together. And I'm really hoping that will move and go forward. I am conscious of time, so last few things. So changes that we might be making. So I didn't feel it was right to send out surveys last year, because obviously it wasn't normal. This year has been normal. We've had our first normal term. We've had a pretty normal half term. We're back really in a fixture list where we were before. We've had a few extra sports. We've got more of an emphasis on strength and conditioning. Fencing's really taken off this year. All our co-ed sports particularly are doing really, really well, and that's really appealed to everybody. I've sent out surveys for the last 2 weeks. I am now in the process of going through those surveys, and I probably predict that changes that potentially will come out of this would be making sure everybody has a bit more access to school teams, perhaps, but also perhaps more access to sports that, let's say, the other gender has, and we have got quite an increasingly larger contingent of those students that are identifying as the other gender, or those that are, identifying as neither. So therefore, having mixed groups, particularly, is something that we might want to investigate moving forward. So that's where I see it, that will open up sports a little bit more. What effect that might have on perhaps dilution of our school teams, I'm not sure, but I haven't made any decisions yet. And I think those are some challenges that we're going to look at moving forward. And I definitely don't have the right answers right now, but I'm hoping to work them out and put a strategy together moving forward for the long term. But yeah, I hope this has been useful, and yeah, hopefully we'll never have to go through it again, but some positives, and you've always got to look at the silver linings of things. So thanks for having me, and good luck.